Hey guys,
Hey, how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Awesome, I'm awesome, I'm awesome. Thank you for joining. Thank you for doing this. I'm just gonna make a tweet and we'll get started.
Yeah, yeah, thanks for hosting me.
Yeah, I've been wanting to do this for a long time, but didn't get around it. But like, I just saw
Yeah,
you, starting rehash, and I'm like, okay, let's do the first Twitter Spaces with you. So might as well.
yeah, we finally found a reason to get something scheduled, so I'm glad that happened.
Yep. Awesome, awesome. So, yep. Um, awesome. So I'll just do a quick introduction of myself and you as well. I'm Dheeraj, guys. We host this podcast called Web3 with not a podcast, sorry, Twitter Spaces Web3 with the every Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. We generally do it at 5 p.m. GMT, which is 10 a.m. PT. But Diana was available at this time, so we're doing it a little bit early. So I'm not sure how the turnout is going to be, but it's okay. We're still here. Diana is a super interesting person whom I really like reading stuff and listening to. She's done over 200 podcast episodes, which is super awesome. Worked with Unstoppable when I first interacted with her, and then did podcast there and content there, and then went on to Rabbit Hole, did content there as well, and now is starting Rehash, which is a super interesting concept, which is a podcasting DAO, right? Like, this is the basic understanding what I have, but Diana is super interested in DAOs as well and NFTs as well. So this is what I understand. Diana, is there anything I missed?
No, at a high level, that's pretty much what it is. It's a podcast DAO, and then I'm happy to talk more about like the details of how that works.
Yeah. I mean, before we get into that, let's talk a little bit about yourself. I'd like to get to know you, and even people who are here would like to get a little bit of understanding about you. How did you get started in Web3 or crypto? What was the motivational factor, and how did you enter the field? We'd like to know that.
Yeah, sure. So I got into crypto like totally by chance. There wasn't really a lot of intention or like me seeking it out. So the long story short is I started my career as an attorney um, in Chicago, and I ended up figuring out that I didn't like that. I couldn't see myself sitting in an office every day for the rest of my life. So I did a real life rage quit, and I decided I wanted to travel the world. So yeah, so it's pretty. It was, I guess, like it sounds pretty impulsive to like quit your job as an attorney to travel the world, but I really had like thought it out for like a very long time. Like it's been years that I was, not happy being a lawyer and ultimately decided to do this. So I started traveling. And at that point, like I had to, I knew I didn't want to go back and sit in an office for the rest of my life, but that meant that I had to figure out what I was going to do instead to like make a living and keep myself alive. So that's when I started looking for ways to like work online, work remote. And this was back in early 2017. So it was, long before COVID happened, and now everybody works remote. But back then in 2017, not that many people were working remote. I didn't know how to work remote coming from such a traditional background as law. So I was like, well, I like to write. I've always liked to write. Why don't I try starting a travel blog, and try being a blogger? So I went down that path. I did that for a few years, got to the point where I was pretty much getting my travels for free. Like I was getting my hotels for free, getting all of my activities on my travels for free. But I still had a mortgage to pay in Chicago, and I still had like other expenses that I needed to make money to figure out at the end of the day. So ultimately I was like, well, okay, I should probably go back and get a, quote unquote real job so I can, be a responsible adult. And so I found this content marketing agency that was fully remote. So I would still be able to travel while still working, and, making a salary. And so I started working there. We ended up shifting our offering to podcasting. So we were helping B2B businesses start their own podcasts. And since we were doing that, I figured, well, I should probably start my own podcast to like sort of give our clients some assurance that, this girl knows what she's doing when it comes to podcasting. So I started my own podcast. It was just a Web2 startup podcast called Startup Happy Hour. Had nothing to do with crypto. I knew nothing about crypto at this point. Had like bought some Bitcoin back in 2017, but didn't understand what any of this really meant, until Matt Gold, who's the CEO and co-founder of Unstoppable Domains, somehow found my startup podcast and really liked it, and ended up hiring our agency to help him start a podcast for Unstoppable. So Unstoppable Domains became a client of mine, my first crypto client. And through Matt, I learned a lot about decentralization, crypto, Web3, everything I knew in the early days, I pretty much learned from Matt. So I really, do credit a lot of my Web3 journey to him. And about a month or two into that client relationship, Matt was like, so do you want to just come work for us full time instead of doing what you're doing here? Like, really enjoy working with you. And I was like at that point, I still didn't really know too much about crypto, but I felt like I knew enough about it to know that it was going to be the future. And it was really exciting. And I wanted to be part of building that. So I was like, hell yeah, let's do it. And started working at Unstoppable at the beginning of 2021. I was leading content there, which included podcasting. And I ended up cranking out 100 podcast episodes in like 10 months at Unstoppable. So I was at Unstoppable from like January until October of 2021, cranked out 100 podcast episodes, and then went over to Rabbit Hole, and started a podcast there. But yeah, like podcasting was like a really good way to help me learn about the space super fast, because I was talking to all these really smart people in the space, and I'm sure you know this, D. It's kind of like a learning hack. Start your own podcast. And yeah.
I'll just add on to that and then we'll go back. So, like, as Diana said, right, like podcasting is like the best learning hack. You get the people whom, like, you think are the experts, let's say, in any field you don't know, or all the fields which you want to learn about, be it DeFi, be it metaverse, be it gaming. You get them, you ask them questions which, like, you really want to know. There will be thousands of other people who have the same questions. So it works out really well. And like when it comes from a person who's like, been doing this or building this for a long time, the alpha is real, right? Like, so the more you talk, the better it is. So I have I have a few questions, right? Like, so this helps, people understand, like, you don't have to be from the field to do this. So you were an advocate, correct me if I'm wrong, before?
I was an attorney before, yeah.
Sorry,
That's what
attorney. Yeah. So, and then you went on to become like a travel influencer and wrote a blog about, right? And then you joined a content marketing company, where you were doing a Web2 startup, right? Like Startup Happy Hour, which again, all of these things, when you look at it, they don't really make sense. And then you went on to do a Web3 podcast with Unstoppable, right? Like, so that's the thing. The barrier to entry is yourself. Like anyone who, even if you're non-technical, you can come in and do it, right? Like, so tell me a little, like, how, like, so what did you, doing these, like, being a travel writer, vlogger, how did it help into, like, you transitioning into Web3? Did any of your prior experiences help you?
Yeah, like I would say, so I totally agree with you. Like looking at this path, it makes zero sense. Like nothing is like expected, like what you would expect to hear. But I do think that my experience being a lawyer and being a travel blogger has helps me in what I do today. I think from the travel blogging part, that experience really taught me um how to like market, I think, and really helped me develop some marketing skills that I could use in like a marketing role. Because before that, all I had known was how to be a lawyer, and all of the writing I had done was very academic or very like legal writing. It's super dry. It's not really stuff that like the masses, like the mainstream audience wants to read. And so I think travel blogging taught me how to write for a different audience. And I think it also like really like upped my skills with social media and just like other like branding and other like marketing things, because I had to figure all of that out for myself. I didn't have anybody like helping me with it really. And then on the lawyer side, like I think a lot of the critical thinking skills from being a lawyer really helped with what I'm doing now. And even like in podcasting specifically, um, I think that like like having to go to court or having to do like depositions where you just ask people a lot of questions and thinking through like how to ask those really pointed questions that will get you like deeper answers into what you're looking for. I think that actually helped. And I don't like to make that comparison because I don't want my podcast guests to feel like they're being interrogated on my podcast. And hopefully they don't feel that way. But like these are like transferable skills.
Yeah, and this is super interesting because I'll give you a little bit more context about myself also, and like I think I can. I did my master's in psychology, so when we had to to complete the courses, we did have to do a lot of experiments and a lot of sit down with a lot of people, ask them n number of questions, and like we were trained to how to ask questions, be it pointed, be it vague, and how to get more information. Or I mean, no one trained us, like they were just guidelines, but I really enjoyed doing that, like just sitting with people taking their case history, or how you ask questions. That's quite interesting. And even I studied psych. I did not do anything related. Then I went on to work with a entertainment startup which was into movies. Then I worked in a little bit in sports and marketing, and then I worked with a craft beer company. And now I'm here, right? Like doing crypto. So like again, crazy uh turn of events, but like a lot of things are transferable. They're not easy, not really easy to think like, oh, this skills can be transferred, but like in hindsight they make sense. This podcast was possible because of our sponsors, Brave and Unstoppable Domains. More about them next. Crypto scams are like box of chocolates. You never know which one you're gonna get. Especially if you're using a crypto wallet, which is a browser extension. You run the risk of attacks like phishing scams, account spoofing, data leaks, and theft. The best way to avoid getting attacked is using Brave Wallet. Brave Wallet is the first secure crypto wallet built directly into a browser, so no extensions required. With Brave Wallet, you can buy, store, send, and swap assets. You can even manage your portfolio and NFTs all in one place. Whether you're new to crypto or a seasoned pro, it's time to switch to Brave Wallet. Download Brave at brave.com/web3with and click the wallet icon to get started. You know what's the worst part about crypto? These long and complex wallet addresses. They can get so confusing. I know you hate them too. What if I told you I replaced my long wallet address with dheerajshah.nft? Yeah, that's my name. All thanks to Unstoppable Domains. They're the #1 providers of NFT domains. With Unstoppable Domains, you don't have to worry about renewal fees because you get to keep your NFT domain forever. You can get an NFT domain as well, maybe a .crypto, .nft, .x, or something else. Go to unstoppabledomains.com right now and get your NFTs for as low as $5. So, yeah, like, how did you get into, like, interviewing for, like, startups, right? Like, from travel to startups, right? Like, what was that thought? Like, why didn't you do a podcast on travel, right? Like, that was the most comfortable field for you.
Yeah, so I actually have like kind of a much deeper background in startups than what I tend to talk about. When I was going through law school, uh, like my second year of law school, I actually started my own company that was like an online marketplace, like a two-sided marketplace for lawyers to find freelance work and for startups and small businesses to find affordable legal help. So I worked on that pretty much all throughout law school. And I was like really deeply connected with the startup community and the tech community in Chicago. And that was just always like an interest of mine. But I was never a technical person. Like I was never a coder. So there wasn't really like an obvious entryway for me into the tech world, but I always kind of had like one foot in the door. So when I thought about, what podcast should I start? It's like a startup podcast just made a lot of sense to me. It was something I was always interested in. I was like, I would love to talk to people in startups and sort of showcase all the different sides of startups. That's something that I cared about with the startup podcast and also now is really showcasing different perspectives. So instead of just having founders on the podcast to talk about like founder things, I would have people who are like junior designers, junior developers, and people from all different sides of the startup world come on the podcast and talk about their experiences because they're all different experiences. And I think when people think about joining a startup or getting into the tech world, it can seem a little scary, especially if you're not a technical person. You might be thinking like, well, how can I add value to the space? And so I wanted to showcase those stories to help people feel more comfortable and feel like, everything is achievable. And it sounds like a lot of what you're trying to do with, your spaces, D, is really like encourage people to think like the only thing stopping you from getting into Web3 or doing whatever you want is really just yourself. Because like, listen to my story, like it makes zero sense.
Yeah, yeah. Thank you for sharing, and that's super interesting. Did not know about the two-sided marketplace you were creating, but like these things are always there, right? Like you just have an idea, maybe you never execute, but like then you just enter a field. So tell us a little bit about like your content marketing journey to like Unstoppable, right? Like how did that conversation happen, right? Like they literally poached you and yeah, you got into Web3. How was that experience when like like you said, right, like you did not have much experience about Web3 or crypto? Was it overwhelming? Was it like easy to get into? Yeah.
Yeah. So like you said, like the transition it was basically Matt poached me. There's not much more to the story than that. Once I got into Web3, it was overwhelming at first, like for sure. I I wasn't really using Twitter at all at that point. So but Matt told me that like, crypto, like the whole crypto community is on Twitter. You got to get on Twitter. So I was like, okay, I got on Twitter. I had like no followers. I just started tweeting about the podcast and tweeting about things that I was learning. And I'm sure they, none of it was like deep insights or anything because at that point I had none. It was really just like basic things that I was learning. And it was a lot of like learning in public. So I just tried to like not be shy about it, not be scared about it, not worry if what I was tweeting was going to sound dumb to somebody else. Like I really just put myself out there and was very like genuine and authentic in my journey. Like I never pretended to know more about crypto than I did. I was always very honest about like, I don't know anything about this. And looking back, I think that is actually like I really encourage people to do that now, as scary as it might feel, because I have gotten so much feedback from like, I haven't gotten this in a while, but in my first like 6 to 9 months in the space, I got so much feedback from people who were like, those early episodes you did at Unstoppable, those are my favorite episodes. And those are the episodes that I send to all of my friends. And like, that's surprising to me because if you asked me, I would think like those episodes were the worst. Like, I didn't know anything about crypto. Like, I was asking the dumbest questions. Um, but I think the reason people liked it is because I was asking all of the questions that everybody else had, but is maybe too scared to ask. And now they get to listen to a podcast where somebody who's not scared to ask these dumb questions can ask all of them and get them answered. So I think people like really enjoy somebody who's not afraid to like step out sort of for the people and ask all the questions that everybody else wants to know. And I think another piece of feedback I got from people was that they really enjoyed watching my journey from being completely new in the space to like really finding my footing in the space. And I think that journey is also like I think people like it because it feels relatable or it feels like inspirational. Like they feel like, oh, I'm like a nobody. I'm like brand new to the space. I don't know anything. I don't know anyone. How will I ever make it? And they see my story or like they follow my journey and they're like, oh, really? Like anyone can do it. Like she has no background in crypto. Like she was totally new. I knew her when she was like, no, like D, I think you've been following me since I was like my early days at Unstoppable when I like nobody knew who I was and like I, didn't have followers. Like I didn't know what I was talking about. And so you've kind of got to see like my whole journey to where I am today. But yeah, like all that to say, it was very overwhelming at first, kind of scary. But I think by not being afraid to put myself out there and not being shy about, like learning in public, I think that really helped me to learn really quickly and like find my place in Web3.
Yeah, thanks for sharing that. And yeah, I completely agree, right? Like, it's good to see people's journey, people's transformation, and like, what they're doing. It's quite inspirational for people. Also, like, yeah, I've been following you since like a long time. I guess I don't recall, but yeah, we spoke early on, and like yeah, what I really liked about you is like just you as a person, I guess, right? Like that just helps. And not to sound like a indie astro person, but like just the vibes were amazing, and that's what we care about, like in crypto DAO community. So like I was like, hey, we should get on a call and have a chat. Like it doesn't matter like what you do, but like yeah, companies keep on changing, things you do keep on changing, but like the people remain the same, right? Like, so if you like someone, so you root for them. So I'm quite happy to like see a journey from like unstoppable to rabbit hole, and then now like on an entrepreneurial journey to do something on your own, which I will ask you stuff about it in a while. But like just setting a little bit context, so the people who are listening, who are new, get to know you, and like they can do this again in 2022. And yeah, that's the reason, like I'm quite happy to like have you.
Yeah, thank you. I'm so happy to chat with you too. It's probably been like a year if I had to guess. I have no concept of time, but I feel like it's probably been a year since we first had our little chat. So we're coming,
Yep.
a lot has happened over the last year.
Yeah, I was working with B21. I was creating content for them, and now, like in December, I quit. Now I'm doing things for myself, right? Like, so just creating content for myself, doing my own Twitter Spaces, podcasts will be recorded as well, right? Like all of this will go there. So it's quite nice. It's solopreneur is a nice journey. Okay, so tell us a little bit about like doing 100 podcasts. How did that feel? Did you ever think in your life you'll do like 100 podcasts when you did your first 100 with Unstoppable?
I mean, I never thought I would be a podcaster before I started my startup podcast, which was like at the beginning, like right after the pandemic started, was when I first got into podcasting. But then I literally never thought I would be a podcaster, even, or like be any kind of like public facing person. So all of that, no, like I couldn't have guessed any of this. Like where I am today, what I'm doing today, I could not have guessed that even yeah, even 1 year ago or even 2 years ago, I could not have guessed this. So it's definitely not a predictable path. But I think at Unstoppable, like once I started doing the Web3 podcast, I truly enjoyed it. Like I couldn't believe that I was getting paid to essentially like learn super fast in the space. Like it felt surreal to me that that was my job and I was getting paid for it. It felt like I felt like I should be paying someone else for this experience because I was learning so much, like so much more than I would even expect to learn in like a university course, that I was like, should I be paying someone for this, or is someone really paying me to do this? So um, that was just like a great experience. I got really into it. Like I truly enjoyed podcasting and talking to all of the people in this space. So at one point, like I just kept ramping up my episodes. I started out with one episode a week. I ramped up to 2 episodes per week. And then at my peak, I was recording 3 episodes, or I was publishing 3 episodes per week. So that's really how the numbers added up so fast. And I got to 100 episodes in 10 months. But I mean, I do have to like shout out Matt again too for being really supportive in that. Like some of the early episodes, I was like, Matt, I can't be having these conversations with like DeFi gigabrains because I don't know, I don't even know anything about TradFi, let alone DeFi. So I just like I can't even have a conversation. It'll feel like a 5-year-old talking to like a university professor. So he joined me on a lot of those early, especially DeFi episodes that like and I think that like really helped me feel more comfortable and helped build up the confidence because I knew I had him there as a crutch. In case, the guest said something that like I just sounded like a foreign language to me. But yeah, like I did a lot of research, was like constantly researching and reading and learning in my free time. And podcasting forced me to learn really quickly too, because if I wanted to interview somebody on the podcast, I had to learn about, what their company does or what their project does, which then would lead me into learning about other concepts, like learning about like what L2s are, like how does blockchain actually work, what is interoperability, like what do all of these things mean. I had to learn about that. So in the beginning, it would like, not even exaggerating, it would take me like 3 days or more to prepare for one podcast interview because I just had no idea like what any of these things meant. And I felt like I was giving myself a crash course on blockchain and decentralization and all of these things. So yeah, it was a lot at first, but over time I got more and more comfortable with, concepts in the space, and that made my job a lot easier, and that also helped me to be able to record more, like 3 episodes per week, which I could not have done in the beginning.
Awesome. Awesome. So a lot of learning to take from that. Tell me, why did you increase the episodes, right? I'm just curious, from 1 to 2 to 3, right? Like, why did you feel the need to do 3 episodes every week?
Um, I think because like it seems like a lot of people really enjoyed the podcast. And I was like, if I can get more content out there and help people learn even more, then, like why not give that a try? Also because since, it was taking me less and less time to prepare for the interviews, I felt like I had the bandwidth to
Mhm.
record like 3 interviews in a week instead of just one. So it was a combination of those. But actually looking back now, like I probably wouldn't recommend like regularly publishing 3 episodes per week because that is a lot of content for people to consume. Or I would just say with the
Mhm.
caveat that if you are to publish 3 episodes a week, that they're shorter episodes. Like I would keep them to maybe like 30-minute episodes instead of 1 hour episodes, which is what I was recording at Unstoppable.
Mhm.
Um, and then when I got to Rabbit Hole too, like something we did there is we built in seasons into the podcasting. So at Rabbit Hole, we were releasing 3 episodes per week, but they were shorter episodes. Each episode was like 30 to 45 minutes. And we did it by seasons. So we would publish for like 2 months, and then we would take a 1 month break and then publish for 2 months again, take a 1 month break. Like that was the cycle. And I think that's a lot more doable because not only do you give yourself a chance as the host to sort of like recover and rest and not get burnt out, but you also give listeners a chance to catch up with all the episodes you missed as well.
Interesting. And just curious about programming. So from 1 hour episodes to 30 minutes, 20 to 30 minutes episodes, what changed? How did you, like, what kind of content did you, skip, or how did the format change?
Yeah, I think I got more topical. So at Unstoppable, the podcasts were really about the person, like the guest's journey. So I would dive deep into like their background, kind of like the stuff that we talked about here so far, and go deep into that. Whereas on Rabbit Hole, I would focus in more on like 2 or 3 topics that I know the guest is really knowledgeable in, and only talk about those things. So we might not get a chance to cover the guest's entire background, but like we'll go real like a lot deeper on just like 2 or 3 topics.
I understand. So, what is the difference, right? Like, what do you like more, or what gets more views? These are my questions.
Yeah, I noticed that shorter episodes definitely get more views. I think the hour-long episodes are just like a little too long to hold people's attention. So I think the shorter episodes do better. It really depends on like the topic and the guest too. So there's so many factors at play. There's, like who your guest is, how well known they are, how much they choose to share out the episode with their followers after it's recorded. There's also like just like what you title your episodes. That makes a big difference. So, like not even going for like the SEO juice, but even just like titling your episode something that's very eye-catching and people will see that and instantly want to listen. But yeah, there's not like a single factor that determines all of this. It's kind of a combination of all of those factors.
Got it. So, as far as I remember, you left Unstoppable around that 100 episodes mark, and then you joined Rabbit Hole, right? Like, what was that journey like? What did you do at Rabbit Hole? I know you were heading content there as well, but what were the key differences?
Yeah, so the biggest difference was that at Rabbit Hole, I was figuring out how to decentralize content. So I was leading content there, trying to build a content engine and scale content in the context of a DAO instead of in the context of a traditional company. So that was the biggest difference, and I have a lot of learnings about that. I wrote an article about it recently with some of my key learnings from there, but like really just spent the last 6 months like focused on how to decentralize content, how to like operate within the context of a DAO, and all of those things. And I learned a lot from that. And I'm, like as like my next steps, I think I'm kind of like looking at focusing in on some DAOs right now and just getting deeper in the DAO ecosystem and having more learnings about like how to best operate a DAO is something that I'm really interested in.
Yeah, so let's talk about that, right? Like, where did your fascination or curiosity about DAOs start? And tell us, why do you like DAOs?
I think initially I was interested in DAOs because it offered a different way to work. It's kind of like a mix of, it's like freelancing, but with like a community built in. So like I freelanced in the past before as a writer, and I never got to know any of the other writers that were freelancing for the same company. It was like a very like isolated sort of thing. But with DAOs, it's almost like freelancing with community, like freelancing with friends. Um, and I think that's what initially attracted me is like I've never really been into like big corporate structures, like the corporate hierarchy and like all of the traditional like corporate ways of doing things. I kind of like a more um, flat structure. I like working in smaller teams that can move a little faster. That's sort of my ideal for working. And I found those things in DAOs, or at least in some DAOs. Like each DAO is obviously very different as well. So that's what initially drew me in. And still today, like I think that DAOs have a lot of potential to do a lot of big things if they're structured properly. Um, so I think that's why I am interested in just going deeper into the DAO ecosystem and, like learning what is the best way to operate a DAO and what's the best way to operate teams to maximize efficiency and work and also like happiness.
And are there any like rookie mistakes people make when creating a DAO or running a DAO, which which over time you might have learned, right? Like, so some tips for running a DAO is what I would ask from you.
Yeah, I think this is like such a hard question, and I've had a lot of people ask like, how do you run a DAO? And it's such a broad question because it's kind of like the same thing as asking like, how do you run a company? And while there
Yep.
might be principles that all companies can kind of follow, it really depends what kind of company, what are your goals, and I think it's the same thing for DAOs. Like you really should look at like what are your goals? What are you trying to achieve? And then like what's the best way to go about achieving that? And it doesn't like your goal can be just vibes. It doesn't have to be like launch a product, or make X million dollars in revenue. It doesn't have to be those goals. It can be any goal. It can be like to create a community with impeccable vibes. Like that can be your goal too. Um,
Mhm.
I think the way that I think a big mistake that a lot of DAOs make is when they just launch, they really optimize for quantity over quality. And I think that is going to be more detrimental to the DAO over time. Like, I think it's really not a numbers game. It's really like creating a sh- community very strategically. And you should start small and make sure that that community actually has the right vibes that you're going for before you go out and expand it. So the way like I think about it and sort of like what I did for Rehash is I think, if you just put out your values, like if you communicate out your values to the world of crypto Twitter, even that will attract the right people to you and to your community. So
Mhm.
like with Rehash, like what I did was I just laid out, I did it like if you read that crowdfund article, I didn't say this is exactly what the DAO is going to do. This is exactly how you can contribute. I gave a few examples of that, but what I really laid out much more in detail is these are our three core values. And sort of like these are the bounds that we're going to operate within. So the options for how you can contribute and what we can do in the DAO, like the sky is the limit, but we're going to operate within these core values and we're not going to do anything that goes against these core values. And I think like within that scope, you can find people who have the same values and principles as you, but that might think differently. So I think like the
Mhm.
best people to surround yourself with are people who are value aligned with you. Like you have the same core principles, and but maybe like different ways of thinking. So maybe like because of the way I grew up, because of the way my parents taught me, I have a certain way of thinking, or because of my experiences, I have a certain way of thinking. But maybe like you have a different way of thinking, Dee, because you grew up in a different background, you grew up in a different country, you've had such different experiences than me. So we could have the same values, like the same core principles that we live by, but we could think about things and go about things very differently. And I think those are the people that you want to surround yourself with the most, because those are the people who can help you, open up your mind to like think different ways, to understand different perspectives, but who aren't going to sort of like attack your like core values.
I love this. I love this, right? Like, and I believe, and I agree with whatever you are saying. And I've seen this play out, and I've seen, like, a lot of communities doing the same thing, what you've said, and it works out well. And I think, um, like, I like, yeah, it's kind of manifesting the kind of people you want by, like, putting your values out, what you're doing, your goals and mission out, and then, like, just attracting those kind of people, right? Like, I mean, yeah, my scientific brain wouldn't want to believe it's true, but it works, right? Like, that's how it is. And I'm sure, right, like, Diana, you can also give empirical data with, like, you doing things with so many DAOs, be it even Rehash, right? Like, you're finding like-minded people by putting all these things out. So, um, yeah, if you want to answer that, you can. And then let's talk a little bit about Rehash, right? Like, why did you start Rehash? Rehash is a podcasting DAO. This is like the basic two-liner. Tell us, what are your values? What are your principles? What's your mission? What's your vision? And everything about it. Why did you start it?
Yeah, sure. So this idea has really evolved pretty quickly over time. It's combining two things that I've spent a lot of time on since joining the Web3 space, which is podcasting and DAOs. The way that I was thinking about this at first was, I was kind of thinking like I've created over like 150 episodes in the crypto space, like at Unstoppable and Rabbit Hole. And yet I own none of that. So now that I've left Unstoppable, like the Unstoppable podcast is no longer mine. Somebody else is running it. Same thing with Rabbit Hole. And as a creator, like at the end of the day, you really just want to have ownership over your work, right? Like I think any creator, whether you're a writer or an artist or a musician, like you just want to have ownership over what you do. And so I thought, like I should probably just start my own podcast, like something that I actually own, instead of, just going to like work for other people's podcasts. And still, like now I can reference people back. I can say, I've recorded 150 episodes. I can send you links to those. But at the end of the day, they're all in fragmented pieces. They're all in different places, and they're not mine anymore. So that was like sort of like the first iteration of it. And then I started just describing this to people. I had another idea to start like a media DAO that would sort of like look a little different from this. But then I was like, why don't I combine these two ideas and turn the podcast into a DAO? I've always had this belief that content should be decentralized. I just think that if you're trying to, and this is like sort of the first core value we have, is that we are going to make a conscious effort to represent as many diverse perspectives as possible. And I think this is so important because we talk about, building out Web3, which is the future of the web. It's like the next iteration of the web. And if this is what we're really trying to do, and everybody spends their time online on the web, then like what we should really be thinking about is how do we create an experience online that is going to benefit everyone who's going to use it. And that includes everybody from all over the world, like not just the people in your bubble, not just the people in North America or in the Western world, but like really everybody from all over the world. And so if this is our goal, then we need to understand the needs and the goals of people from other backgrounds and other places around the world. Like I can only speak to my experiences that I had as, a Chinese American female who grew up in America. That is my specific set of experiences. And I can't even speak for every other Chinese American female who grew up in America. Like, we had different experiences too. So, like, the only way you're going to understand and be like other people's perspectives is to be exposed to them. So I think it's really crucial that we put a conscious effort out towards bringing on diverse voices, people from all over the world, people from all different backgrounds, to like really share what it is that they need and that they want in the future of the web. And then the second core value we have is that, the world, and that includes the world of Web3, operates on a grayscale, that not everything is in black or white. Not everything is good or bad. Not everything is decentralized or not decentralized. There's a scale, there's a spectrum that everything operates on. And I think when, like when we see a lot of the hate that happens on Twitter and a lot of the arguments and stuff, I think it stems from people thinking in binary. And that's maybe how code operates, but that's not how the world operates. And that's not how humans operate. So that's like a core value too, is like, we're not just going to say that like decentralization is good, centralization is bad. Like, no, there are good and bad aspects to both of those. We're not going to say speculation is bad, whatever is good. Like, speculation can be good too. The fact of the matter is, speculation is how a lot of people get into the space, is from price speculation. And true, like we ultimately, we want them to learn more about what decentralization has to offer than just speculating on prices. But if that's the way to get people in the door, then so be it. That's the way, we should lean into that. So that's our second core value. And then our third core value is that like we are still in the early stages, which I know people say that all the time, like we are still early. But like sort of what this means, at least for me, is that first of all, because we're so early, whatever we do now is going to have a big impact in the world, right? So it's like, imagine like working on the internet, the World Wide Web in the early days, like in the 90s. Whatever you did back then could have had such a bigger impact than whatever you do now for like Web 2. It's the same thing with Web 3. Like, we're in those early days of building it out. And I think this also means that because we are still so early, we recognize that we still know very little. Like, it's like what people knew about the internet in the 90s was probably a lot less than what people know about the internet today. And so like when you recognize that you know very little about this topic, that helps you to stay humble, and to maybe like listen better, be a better listener to what other people have to say, and to be more open-minded and not form these like conclusions about certain things and prescribe certain characterizations onto things that you don't fully understand just yet. So those are kind of our three core values, and they're broad, but they're also like pretty specific. But I think within those three core values, like whatever the community wants to create is on the table. Whether, people want to turn this DAO into like a podcast studio where we help other people start podcasts in the space, that could be an option. Or people could start like a newsletter. They could start a website, an education portal. They could start like weekly calls for people who are brand new to the space to like walk them through the space, almost like office hours, like hold their hand and get them set up. That honestly, like the possibilities are endless, and I'm really excited to see what the community comes up with. Like, I have all of these ideas, but I want to hear it from the community. And as long as it's within the scope of these three core values that we hold, and it's going to help people learn about Web3, that's like all I care about. Then like anything else is up to the community.
Yeah, that's awesome, right? Like, thank you for sharing all your values and what you're doing. It's super interesting, right? Like we have to be conscious on making choices on the types of guests we invite and the people we talk to, because representation matters. But just talking about that, right? Like I talk to a lot of people here on spaces, and I asked them this, just few years back the space was completely filled with finance people using crypto as a financial tool, mostly living in America, mostly male, mostly white men. And like over a period since pandemic hit, since the metaverse narrative, since the NFT narrative, right? Like we've seen a lot of people who are not fitting the stereotype get into the field and are doing some awesome work, right? Like, so what do you think, like have people's role model changed over time, or like do you generally see more and more inclusivity happening, or what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I think we're going to see more inclusivity happening because Web3 is branching out and reaching the mainstream. And once you get the mainstream involved, like there's just going to be more inclusivity there. But I do see like certain, I guess, segments of people within Web3 who still maybe are a little siloed. Like you were saying, like you have the DeFi community, especially like the OG DeFi community, or like people who've been in the DeFi world from, the early days, or like 2013 or even pre 2017. I think they have that community has like a certain air to them, versus like, for instance, the NFT community who just got into the space in the last year. Um, they're very different communities, and I think that there can be some sort of like animosity between these two communities, and there's even more communities than just this, but like just taking these two as an example, I think the NFT community sort of looks at the DeFi community and they say, the DeFi community is so like mean and non-inclusive. They don't care about onboarding newbies, blah, blah, blah. And then the DeFi community looks at the NFT community and they're like, but you guys don't even understand like what we're here for. You're just like tweeting cute pics on Twitter all day and you're still speculating on prices. So you can't even criticize us for speculating on prices because you guys are doing it too. And on top of that, like you don't understand what we're doing. You don't understand the core principles of decentralization. You're not building, you're just tweeting. Like we're here building cool stuff that's going to impact the future. So, like both sides are right in their own way. I think everybody in this space is contributing in some way. And I think like what we need more of is really just people being more open to hearing other people's perspectives. Like we need the NFT community to be more open to hearing from the DeFi community and hearing their thoughts and what they deem to be valuable and what they think they're contributing here and what they understand decentralization to mean. And then maybe the DeFi community can like be open-minded and hear from the NFT community about like why they think community is important, and like community is also a big part of this decentralization goal that we all have in common, that we're just approaching it from a different way. Like you're building the core infrastructure for decentralization, which is great and we need that. But like we're building, and by, I mean like the NFT community is building like the human aspects of it. It's like you need the tech layer, but then you also need the human layer because at the end of the day, we're all humans that are using the technology. So I think everyone is contributing in their own way to this space. And instead of like fighting each other about like you're not contributing in the right way or whatever, like we should all just work together and like appreciate, each other's own ways of contributing.
Yeah, that's a great insight. That's a great observation. Diana, I think you should consider podcasting and put these uh, yeah, jokes apart, yeah, like tell us, you've been raising money for Rehash, right? Like, and there was a 10 ETH goal. It just started yesterday. I think you've surpassed the 10 ETH goal. Tell us a little bit about fundraiser. What are these two kind of NFTs there are, or the roles you can get in your DAO? Tell us a little bit more about that.
Yeah, sure. So we started our crowdfund yesterday. We set the goal for 10 ETH because this is sort of like the bare minimum we need to compensate our team for work into seasons 1 and 2 of the podcast. And then plus like a little extra to go into the treasury. But like really, and right now I just opened this up. We're at 18 ETH already, which is insane. Like we hit our goal within the first hour and a half of the crowdfund, which like blew my mind. Like I never could have imagined that. Like I was kind of thinking, oh, like 10 ETH, it'll probably take us like a week to get there. And like, no, it took an hour and a half to get there. Um, and now we're at 18 ETH. But like the more, all of the excess funds that we raise from the crowd fund is going to go into our DAO treasury. So we have a multi-sig set up on Gnosis already where all the money is going to go into there. And the community, the DAO, will then be able to decide how to spend that money. So, you know, it can be like whatever initiatives they come up with that they want to create that is going to cost some ETH. Like that's where we can, you know, they can submit a proposal to the DAO, say like, hey, I want to start this educational course for newbies in the space. It's going to cost me X number of ETH to do this for the next 3 months. And then the community votes on that, whether they think that's going to be valuable or not. And if they vote yes, then that money will come out of the DAO treasury and go towards, you know, that person or that group of people to build out what they said they're going to build out. So the crowdfund comes with a couple of different NFTs. When you contribute to the crowdfund, you get an NFT as well. And these were designed by this girl, Libby Kramer, who is also new to the space, and hopefully this will be a good way to onboard her to Web3. But she's a fantastic designer, and she made these cute little like avatars. We like call them Diana tars jokingly because they're like Diana avatars. But they look really cute. My profile pic right now is one of them, and then another one is the Rehash Web3 profile pic. But your NFT is your ticket into the DAO. So if you hold an NFT, you get to join the DAO. And that means you get to, you know, like vote on things, nominate guests, like do whatever. The two different tiers we have one tier, which is 0.05 ETH, and then another one, which is 0.5 ETH. So for the 0.05 ETH, so like anybody who participates to the crowdfund, you'll be able to nominate any guest you want for the podcast. So we'll be using Snapshot, and I'll have like a nomination template for people to use. So it's really easy. You just fill out the template, submit your Snapshot proposal, and then people will be able to vote on like yes or no, basically on each of the guests. And then the next tier up, the 0.5 ETH NFT, holders of that NFT will be able to do the voting. So it's kind of like anybody in the DAO can nominate and submit guests. And then the people who hold that 0.5 ETH tier NFT will be able to actually vote. And yeah, this is like just V1 of the DAO. Like I'm sure things will develop down the line, but it looks like so far we have 75 backers. And so that's 75 people in the DAO. And it's still, I mean, we're planning on keeping the crowdfund open for, you know, at least through the end of the week. So hopefully, you know, even more people join. But I think this is, even like looking through, I know a lot of the names, and I think that this is working. I think that like we're bringing in a really solid group of values aligned people. And I am just so excited to get everybody into a Discord chat together, which we're working on putting together right now, so that everyone can meet each other and like hang out with each other, and not just be interacting with me.
That's awesome. That's awesome. So yeah, you again, right, like a value-based community, right? Like people who like what you're doing and have similar values are coming together in like a Rehash Discord or community. So, which is also I find quite interesting. I have pinned the crowd fund. You can go and check it out. Again, no investment advice. You can just do your own research and check it out if you want to support or not. That's completely up to you guys. Yeah, and tell us a little bit more about, like, what are you excited to do with this DAO? What kind of changes are you going to do in terms of podcasting with Rehash? And, like, what should we be looking forward for?
Yeah, for sure. I think long term for me, if all goes well, we'll see people in the community stepping up to take on leadership roles and really taking initiative to do things. I would love to see this turn into the place where people go to learn about Web3 initially, like a place where we've created so many resources for newcomers to the space that we're just out there like onboarding everybody into Web3. That would be super cool for me to see. But like really like long term, what I want to see is just that the DAO is people are stepping up in the DAO, people are active and engaged in the DAO, people are like putting out cool new ideas and actually taking initiative to build them. That's like really what I want to see. I don't want to see me as like the central part of the DAO for very long at all. If we can help that.
Interesting, quite interesting. Also, tell me, like, currently, what is your team like? What are people doing? How are they helping you grow this?
Yeah, so the core team, and I do have another call in a minute, so I'm gonna have to hop soon. But the core team is myself, and then we have 2 podcast producers and then 2 designers. So it's a pretty small little team, and that's like all the people that have been putting all of this together so far.
Awesome. So thank you for taking your time out. And yeah, okay. One quick question: if someone
Yeah.
wants to help contribute to your DAO, what do they do?
Yeah, you can go to Rehash Web3 on Twitter. That's the handle. And you can look at the pin post there, which will link you to the crowdfund, which is on Mirror. So if you click on the link, it should be pretty obvious. You'll see Rehash DAO crowdfund, and you'll just see a button, back this project, and that's how you can contribute. Connect your wallet. All our backing, all the contributions we're taking are in ETH. So you'll need to have some ETH in your wallet, and then you can go there and back the project and get your NFT, and that's your ticket into the DAO.
Awesome. So thank you for taking your time out and doing this. Guys, go follow Diana if you're not already following. If you learned anything from this episode, from this chat, go reshare this and tag me, tag Diana. Tell, like, what were your takeaways from this conversation. And just want to thank Diana for being here and doing this.
Thank you so much for having me, Dee, and thank you everyone for tuning in. I would love to hear from all of you if you have other questions. So yeah, thank you. Thank you so much.
Awesome. Bye. Take care.